Hi, everybody. This is Steve Maggi from SMA Law Firm. Welcome to Building the Bridge. I have the honor of being here today with Charlotte Nytoft, a strategic export advisor working with European companies launching in the US. Thanks for joining us, Charlotte.
Thank you so very much, Steve.
So one of the things that's very important on the immigration side when you're setting up a US company is hiring US workers and setting up a team. That's how you get your visa. That's how you get additional visas. But in terms of the success of the business overall, what factors do European companies need to think about when hiring US workers and building a US team?
One of the most important things that they need to be aware of is simply the work culture differences in the style and the kind of management that we are imposing on the US operation. In Denmark, we have, obviously it's a little bit different from country to country in Europe, but talking from a specific Danish point of view, we have some very flat hierarchies in Denmark. They're basically not existing. And we have these, you can say, an open door policy. Every employee, rank and file employees to the managers, they're always welcome to come to the CEO and voice their concerns about something that really is not on their, you can say, list of to-dos in the job, and does not really is connected directly to their job, but they can see something happening in the organization and they are proposing a change or something to that extent. That is the way we're working in Denmark. And if you're trying to impose that culture on US workers in a, you can say, let's say in a manufacturing setting where you have multiple layers of blue collar workers in multiple teams and with managers in a couple of different layers in the production, that usually does not go over very well, because the American work culture is simply cut out in a different way. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny because with immigration petitions like an L1, when you want to extend your L1, you have to show that you have been what's called removed from day-to-day activities, and you need to show an organizational chart where you're clearly above and there's clear separation of different duties and different levels in that hierarchy. So the mentality is completely different. It's structured vertically versus, like you said, in a more linear way. And so you need to adapt that, I guess, if you're going to launch US operations, right?
Yeah. And you also need to, what you really need to do when you go to the United States and set up your operation is actually to draw the organization chart day one, understanding that from the get-go, you might not have these 8 layers in your organization. It might be a small organization, but you really need to start acting as if you had multiple layers, because also, they will come at some point in your US operations. And if you're deploying a person from Europe to start building the manufacturing production in the United States, which is oftentimes the case, then you really need to make a clear decision. What type of leadership structure do you want to do? Do you want to impose a sort of a Danish flat hierarchy structure, or do you want to see the future where the production will be managed by an American? Because one of the big mistakes you can do is actually to start doing a lot of legwork to actually get the Danish business culture worked into the employees of the factory, just to see everything fall to the ground when the Danish manager go back home to Denmark, and they will be employed in an American manager, site manager, general manager, CEO, president, or whatever in the organization, and he will obviously, or she will impose some of the more traditional American work cultures in the organization.
There's an expression that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and
exactly,
unless you're hiring everybody right out of college, you're going to be hiring people that are actually experienced, have local market knowledge, especially if they're in sales. They have their way of doing things. They've worked for other companies that do things in an American way. And so a lot of times it might be more beneficial to adapt to a more American style structure and way of managing as well, right?
exactly. If that is what you foresee for the future, if you say we will at all times for this corporation have European management on the key positions in the organization, then obviously it will be a different case, because you can continuously influence the organization and put some of the work culture from Europe into the organization and have that percolate down to all levels. But if you know from the get-go that you want to make a change at some point, then you might as well make that one European adapt to American culture right away, to not have these peaks and valleys in your production and in your employment of staff in the United States.
Right. What kind of advice do you give European companies when they start thinking about hiring practices? Obviously, one big difference is, that in the US it's at will employment, and then there's a lot of movement, a lot of people come and go. And in Europe, they tend to stay a lot longer, but that's also because employers are scared to let people go because there are repercussions, and you have to compensate people. It's very different. So how do you suggest people, when you talk about what the landscape looks like for hiring, suggestions for hiring, as well as, what the implications are in terms of quality, or how to retain, or to maybe, if you don't retain them and give them lots of incentives, maybe they'll go somewhere else?
Yeah. So first of all, I use quite a bit of time to an effort to actually help the companies understand the you can say the commitments and their obligations and duties as a business owner, first of all, and then as an employer, secondly, because a lot of European business owners misunderstand that now we have a business in the United States, so now we are also able to actually go and hire people. And as you need actually to educate yourself and really do the effort to understand the US labor market to a minimum. And my first and foremost advice is, do not, and that may sound a little harsh, but do not make the first American employee to your advisor and consultant on employment in the United States. Because you again, drawing the organization chart, you need to understand, if the first person you hire in the United States should not be your advisor on anything employment, because at some point this person may go down in the organization, or may go up, or may stay at the same level. But
when you
ultimately,
when you say advisor with regards to employment, what do you mean exactly? Like they're the decision maker as to who hires?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for instance, a big difference in the United States is obviously the sort of the benefit structure. How do you actually compensate people in the United States? That is entirely different, because you have the benefits for healthcare and pension and so on is strictly you can say divided from the salary, because it's something that you are basically negotiating separately in the United States. And that's a big decision for people to actually make a change. If they are if they have some conditions in the family, they may not dare to actually change to a new and perceived startup business from Europe, because they consider it too dangerous or too risky to actually make that jump to another corporation, simply because of the benefits that a company from Europe may not be able to provide from the get-go. So that alone, understanding how you're actually positioning yourself with the package that you're offering. And some European companies say we just need to hire somebody, and then he or she needs to figure out how this is all working, and then they will figure it out for the next employees on the team.
Doesn't work that
way. It doesn't work that way, because then you also unintentionally give that first employee way too much leverage and way too much, you can say, power. And the risk being that this first employee would actually fit the structure, so it fits his or her personal business, which may not be the right for the company. And I have seen examples of that first employee who were then actually had the carte blanche to actually make it in the way he thought it should be done. So they were basically not really able to employ further people under the same lavish conditions that the president have given himself. So yeah, so that's definitely some of the first advice that I give to people. Don't make that first employee your go-to. You need to understand to a certain level what it takes to be an employer of a US team.
And I think that's where I come into a lot of these cases too, because it's very important to have somebody from your parent company on the ground in the US with the ability and the authorization to take whatever measures are necessary to implement a business plan to make sure that it keeps in line with the vision of the company. And also the hiring is so important. Like you said, each employee is sort of an extension of that. And if you hire the wrong people in the beginning, it's going to be very hard to undo that, because
Yeah.
you're creating a culture that's, I guess, goes against what you actually wanted to do. So
Yeah,
how do
exactly.
European companies that are thinking about launching in the US get in touch with you when they want to talk about strategy, which includes hiring and building out a team?
They can get in touch with me by connecting on LinkedIn or by sending me an email at charlotte@exportacrossthepond.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for all your insights today.
You're welcome, Steve. Thank you very much.